I think as everybody knows, there has been a lot of discussion in the last few weeks concerning the third generation formula for sharing of national resources to the counties. As you are aware, every 3 years, the Constitution demands that the Senate, through the recommendation of the Commission for Revenue Allocation, must vote to decide the formula to be applied for division of funds between the national government and counties, and also among counties. And that formula is reviewed, as I have said, every 3 years. And right now, we have had two formulas which have been in place since devolution started in 2013. Senate now is at the tail end of completing the adoption of the third generation formula, which will operate from this financial year and the next, in the next 3 financial years. It has come to our concern that in the last 3 weeks, amendments have been made to the formula that had been recommended by the CRA, and those amendments are causing great disadvantage to 18 counties in the Republic of Kenya, including the county of Tharaka Nithi, which I represent in the Senate. What has happened is that the old formulas, the second generation formula, for example, which was enacted 3 years ago, actually led to an increase of funds in every county without affecting any single county negatively. And that's why it was unanimously passed without any objection. Strangely, this formula, which is proposed and which is coming up for voting in the Senate on Tuesday next week, this formula, the proposed formula, is advantaging about 26 counties, actually 28 counties, in a big way. Some counties are gaining as much as 1.3 billion shillings in the new formula. Others are gaining hundreds of millions. Meru County, for example, our neighbor here, is gaining over 500 million shillings every year. Nandi is gaining almost $1 billion. Kiambu is gaining 1.1 billion. Counties like Kericho, Uasin Gishu, in fact, Uasin Gishu is the highest, with about nearly 1.3 billion extra. However, at the same time, the same formula is causing 18 counties to have less money. Some of them, especially the small marginalized counties, which have been getting small budgets because of their population size, and also the land mass size, are actually suffering a great setback. I'm talking about counties like Samburu, Taita Taveta, Tharaka Nithi, and so forth and so on. Isiolo, and for example, Tharaka Nithi, in the proposed third generation formula, will lose 367 million shillings. Now, with a budget of about 3.9 billion, which is the shareable revenue, because in the allocation of funds, there is what we call the shareable revenue, which is the basic fund, and then there are conditional grants and donor funds. So the budget of Tharaka Nithi, for example, at the moment, this past financial year, is 4.6 billion shillings. But what constituted the shareable revenue is 3.9 billion. The rest of the money, approximately 700 million, came through conditional grants. For example, grants to level 5 hospitals, grants to youth polytechnics, grants which are targeted to doing certain things which the counties cannot have an option in terms of deciding where to allocate that money, plus of course donor money. So a small county like Tharaka Nithi, whose shareable revenue is 3.9 billion shillings, losing 367 million shillings per financial year, is actually losing nearly 30% of the development budget of that financial year. Why do I say so? Out of the 3.9 billion shillings or so that comes to Tharaka Nithi, nearly 2 billion shillings is on recurrent expenditure. Salaries, buying vehicles, tires, airtime, stationery, recurrent expenditure, money that is used to finance government, but doesn't go to development. So the money that actually goes to development in Tharaka Nithi County is somewhere between 1.2 and 1.5 billion every year. So to lose nearly 400 million out of, for example, 1.2, 1.3 development amount is actually like losing 30% of the money that would have gone to development. To understand this better, you should ask ourselves what 367 million shillings can do in Tharaka Nithi. 367 million can build a brand new level 5 hospital in Tharaka Nithi from scratch to end. 367 million shillings can actually build about 50 health centers, level 2, level 3 facilities in this county. 367 million shillings can actually tarmac 10 kilometers of a new road from A to Z until completion. So we are talking about a lot of money, and if you multiply that with 3 years, then we'll be losing like $1 billion shillings in the next 3 years when this proposed third generation formula is in force. For that reason, therefore, I and also my colleagues from 18 other counties that are affected by this proposed formula, which in my view, as an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, I can say, without any fear of contradiction, is an unconstitutional formula. Any formula that leads to counties getting less money is an affront to the basic dictates and principles of devolution under our constitution. And for that reason, I and other senators representing 18 other counties across this country, on Tuesday next week, we give notice to the country that we will resist that formula vehemently. We will be in the Senate to oppose it and to lobby our colleagues from the other counties, even counties that could have been benefited from this formula, to try and help us by voting against that formula, because today it might be Tharaka Nithi and these 18 which are losing money. Tomorrow, if we allow such an unconstitutional process, another county is going to be affected, maybe in a greater margin, whereby through some mathematical formula, which is whimsical, Senate approves a formula which, for example, takes a whole billion shillings or 2 billion shillings or even half of the county revenue or county development funds from a particular county. If we adopt this formula, I can say without fear of contradiction, counties like Tharaka Nithi, Isiolo will be wound up. You'll be shut down. There is nothing the governors will do. So we'll oppose it. We will lobby vehemently so that our colleagues can also see the sense in it. We don't mind counties gaining more money, and we are telling government that we do know that this year it has not been possible to increase the annual allocation to counties. The annual allocation of counties was agreed by consensus by the two houses of parliament to remain at 316.5 billion, which is the same amount which was given last year. We do understand, because of the devastating effects of COVID-19, the national government is likely to collect less revenue from taxes. And therefore, we are not really complaining that the money has not been upped from last year's gross figure of 316.5. However, what we are saying is that at the least, the same way the amount has remained stagnant at 316.5, counties should at the very least, using whatever formula, we don't care which variables are used, but at least no county should get less money than what was allocated last year, at the very least. Anything short of that is unconstitutional, anti-devolution, and we shall resist it vehemently.